tier list. Uh, got all the movies set up right here for us. And I guess let's get into this. I guess we'll go from the original and just make our way in movie release order. So for the original, I mean, it's a classic. It's no question. It's going in S tier. Like, it's what started this whole thing. 70 years is all because of this movie. Instant S tier. Right again, I think this movie is very underrated. Um, I guess see how like people putting it in like FD tier. Some people saying it's their least favorite, like one of their favorite movies. It just baffles me. Like the fighting, it's a little choppy, yes, but I actually like that. Like, I like the style of fast-paced fighting, and I like the characters in the movie. And for that, it gets an A tier for me. I'm a big fan of the movie. So next we got Godzilla vs King Kong. This was always hard. Like, there's so many great things about the movie, and it really feels like it's the start of the Showa era. But it just, at the same time, lacks in a lot of ways, and just can't keep up with some of the newer stuff. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and put it in like a high B tier. Mothra vs Godzilla, S tier. It's probably the best of the Showa era. Honestly, in my opinion, it's better than the original. It's the quintessential Showa Godzilla movie because it's perfect. There's very few, if any, flaws in that movie, and they truly hit it out of the park with this one. Ghidorah the Great Monster, A tier. I mean, introduces Ghidorah and doesn't introduces Ghidorah and adds Mothra and Rodan into the Godzilla franchise. Rodan being my favorite monster, and he has an incredible display of feats against Godzilla. So seeing Rodan be able to put up a fight against Godzilla, I'm always here for. So that's instant A tier for me. We'll put it at the top of A. Invasion of Astro Monster. A lot of people say it's better than Ghidorah the Great Monster. I do think that Glenn helps this movie a lot, and just the characters is better. But I don't think the fight scene, like, it lacks Godzilla and the monsters so much in this movie, and they don't do a whole lot except for the very end. And even that fight scene in the end doesn't match up to what happens in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. So for me, I'd say it's lower in the A tier, maybe even B tier. We'll put high B tier and see if we change it. Ebra. Oh my gosh. If there's ever a movie that I think is like extremely underrated, it's this one by far. The I'd say it's like top 5 of the Showa era, and it just like the characters in it and the plot is just like strangely very good for this era of like the Showa era, and it a shining cast that just shines through and just really pushes this movie forward. Ebra isn't the greatest villain, but I think that's made up with by great human villains in the Red Bamboo. This movie has so much for everybody. Like, there's like great plot, great villains, great main characters. The Godzilla design is alright. It's a little goofy, but it's still a pretty strong design. It's no 64 or 62, but it gets through. And Ebra, like I said, isn't the strongest villain, but he makes it by. Son of Godzilla. I see a lot of people say that they actually like this movie, and I know my girlfriend is one of them. That's what I think. Manila is just my least favorite character in all of the Godzilla franchise. Worse than Gabra, worse than Megaguirus. Like, just so obnoxious. And I mean, Megaguirus and Gabra are obnoxious if you've seen those movies. But Manila just takes the cake for me. I just cannot. The stupid scene with him jumping on the tail. Yes, it's funny the first time, but there's just no rewatchability to this movie. It's a snooze fest, and the villains are all so lame. I mean, if you think Ebra's lame, Kumonga, Kamakuris, like yes, Kumonga I think has a great design, but after that, this movie fails in so many different ways. The movie that doesn't fail, however, in my opinion, is Destroy All Monsters. I don't think it's S tier. I think it's just for a big party. I think it's up there. I think it's a great movie, but the stuff with the astronauts, it just takes away from the movie. It slows it down a lot in a very quick paced, like boom, boom, boom. This is all happening. It's very all over the place, and it's like tone and it's like the flow of the movie, and that really hurts the movie. I think that's the weakest aspect. The fight scenes are all amazing, especially the final fight. Um, Whenever Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, Manda are all attacking Tokyo, that's another amazing fight. Or not fight, but like battle, I guess. I don't know. And it's all so good, and just unfortunately the pacing of the movie just freaking sucks. Actually, I'm gonna put Ebra above Destroy All Monsters. Next, it's the worst Godzilla movie. Like, there's just no questioning it. It's a very weak movie and a very tough time for the Godzilla franchise. I mean, I just don't. I can't think of a good part of the movie. I guess my favorite part of the movie is the fight between the kid, like whenever the kid escapes, using what he's learned from his dreams throughout the movie, and fights off those two guys. It's just bad. It's bad. Yeah. Not much else to say. Next one, Hedorah. I can't. This is a movie that changes a lot for me. Sometimes it's an F tier, I'm not gonna lie, and other times it's an A. It's just kind of the mood that I'm in. I think right now I'm just not feeling the movie, and I'm gonna put it in a high D, simply because I know that other times I do really like this movie. It's very dark. Like, the setting it's just always dark. It's like they forgot to turn on a light on set whenever they made the movie, and it causes the movie to just almost be hard to see at times. And Hedorah is a great villain. The Godzilla suit design following from the last two is amazing. But the I hate whenever the little kids are the main characters in the movies. They're always so annoying, and that hurts a movie having a main character that's just obnoxious, and that hurts this movie in my opinion. I met him at G Fest a couple years back, and he was a great guy. I'm sorry to say you were annoying as a kid, but you were. Maybe it's because I usually watch this movie in dubbed, and the dubbed is so I guess now that I think about it, it's not actually him, but I haven't heard his voice in the Japanese version. I don't think I've watched it, but dubbed, this movie is that kid is obnoxious. Godzilla versus Gigan. The people that put this movie in like C, D tier frustrates me so much. It's so easily like one of the best show movies in the era. I just don't understand the hate. It's just a fun monster battle. Anguirus finally gets time to shine in this movie, and honestly, I'd say him and Gigan are the two biggest that's when I think of this movie, those are the two that I think of. I think of that, and then the Godzilla Tower. And the main cast is so strong and fun to watch. They all have great interactions with each other. Sometimes the plot is a little hard to follow. It's like, oh, this is happening. What? Why is this is just happening without any setup or anything like that? But it's whatever. Maybe an extra 15 minutes to the movie just to help round it all out would have helped. But I'm not gonna fault it too much. I love this movie a lot. I'm a big fan of Gigan. So this movie is pretty high on the list for me. Getting to near the end of the Showa era, we've got Megalon. I'm sorry to the people that like this movie. It just doesn't do it for me. I I like a more serious Godzilla, and you're gonna see that with my ranking on the Heisei era and some of the later stuff. And this is as far from serious as it gets, and that hurts the movie for me. I Megalon is a great concept, and we finally saw him get used well in the new Godzilla short, Godzilla vs Megalon, and he's amazing in that. I just wish that they would do something along more like that, those lines, in a newer movie with him, because I would love Megalon, but this movie just doesn't do it for me. And Jet Jaguar, I'm not the biggest fan of him. I won't lie to you. I I don't like the size changing. I guess is what doesn't do it for me. It's the same way for how it was in Singular Point. I don't like Jet Jaguar. It's just not my thing. Moving on, S tier. This movie is incredible. The plot is amazing. All of the characters just do it for me. The villains, the main characters, the side characters, it's all perfect. Everyone's acting in this movie is like top notch in the show era for back then at least. Like it doesn't those three and like and S tier, that is peak show era for me, and just like these three movies are what make the Showa era so great. A serious tone while still having, those Showa era jokes and Showa era style that comes along with it. And Terror of Mechagodzilla, I always feel like it's just Mechagodzilla's like, or Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla's deformed little brother. It just doesn't, not deformed, just like not as cool. Like he's the little brother that gets bullied in school. He just, this movie just isn't it. Like Titanosaurus is great, the upgrades on Mechagodzilla is incredible. All the fights are amazing, but the like cyborg plot is just so, it drags the movie down. It kind of suffers from the same issues as Destroy All Monsters. I'd say it doesn't suffer as much. Maybe I'd put. Nah, I'm gonna keep it there. All right, getting on to my favorite era, the Heisei era. This is like, other than two of these movies, I'd say they're all basically perfect. Return of Godzilla, top of A tier for me. Yeah, I'd put him there. Biollante, even higher on the A tier. I'm just gonna get to these. I mean, I think everyone can agree. This movie, a lot of people have it really high up. I don't. This is one of those two that I just can't do. The Dorats ruined Ghidorah for me. The Ghidorah design itself is amazing, but I don't like the Dorats plot, and I don't like the cyborg in the movie. The cyborg, it's just, they were trying to do too much with this movie in a time where they didn't have the stuff to do it. They wanted to remake this with the technology that we have today. By all means, go ahead, but it just doesn't work for 91. Like they're just trying to do too much, and that is what holds this movie back for me. Mecha King Ghidorah is great. Like I want Mecha King Ghidorah to show back up so bad in like a MonsterVerse movie or something like that. But this movie's just not it. This, however, I think most people actually don't like, but I freaking love. I love the characters. I love the fighting between the mom and dad, and it's just so stupid, but it's fun. And a lot of people say that they don't like the fight scene in this movie, but the fight in the water with Batra larva and Mothra larva and Godzilla is one of my favorite fight scenes in the entire franchise. And then the final fight is also up there for one of my favorite fights in the entire franchise. This movie does fight scenes, in my opinion, so well. I I get it. Later on in the franchise, or in the Heisei era, the beam battles, they get tiring. But this is really the first movie to do it, where it's just, they're just kind of spamming the beams, and this movie I think does it the best. I don't think that it slows down from the fights. Having having Mothra and Batra fly around really helps it not feel like Space Godzilla and Godzilla, where they're standing there just blasting each other repeatedly. Same with Mechagodzilla. It just like that drags the fight down. But this here, I don't think it does. I think that this fight is amazing. Batra's sacrifice in the end. He's one of my favorite monsters, up there with Rodan and Destroya. So Batra looks so good in this movie. He's portrayed so strongly. He seems like he's stronger than maybe, like, he's up there with Godzilla in his Batra larva form. And I honestly wish they would have just kept him in his larva form, because he feels like a real threat in that larva form. And Batra larva is just like so underrated as a kaiju. Another great Heisei movie. I think I'm gonna put it right above Mothra. I think the only flaw that I could see in this movie is the Mechagodzilla design, which I personally like. So for me, that doesn't even bother me. Fire Rodan is amazing. Probably a little biased because of Rodan in this movie. I just love his design and what he does in this movie with sacrificing himself for Godzilla. Just really makes this movie stand out to me as one of my favorites. And the second downer of the Heisei era. Man, if only they could have done better with these two movies. It'd just be such a strong era. I mean, it already is, but it would be perfect. But then these two just hurt it. Space Godzilla is definitely the weakest in my opinion. I honestly don't think this movie has much going for it. Like, the character stuff I enjoy. Like, the human plot is good. But the fight scenes drag and drag. It's just beam battle after beam battle. And then there's no movement. They're so slow, especially Space Godzilla. I mean, he just drags this movie a lot. Mogira is the highlight, in my opinion. Mogira is very much faster, and the internal problems between the pilots just works for me. But that's it. That's all this movie's got, is really just those three guys. Like, they push this movie out of F tier for me. But Mogira, a monster that wasn't even originally supposed to be in this movie, is what saves the movie for me. Next up, my favorite of the Heisei era. My second favorite Godzilla movie of all time. It's Godzilla vs. Destroya. There's not much to say. Everyone loves this movie. If you don't, you probably don't like Godzilla that much, because it means so much for the franchise. Seeing Godzilla die once again, and it's so emotional between him and Junior Godzilla, and Destroya is perfect in this movie. Like, I don't think they possibly could have done Destroya better than they did. And if Destroya's ever to show up again, they just simply need to copy what they did with in this movie with him, and just redo it in a new design while basing it off the old one and newer CGI or whatever, because this movie is perfect. Please listen to the following warning. Hey guys, sorry the video got cut short. It ends up being like a 40-something minute video, and I'm not uploading that. So, I had no idea that was going to end up happening. My bad. I guess I should have been keeping track of that time. So we're going to make this a two-part series. I'll upload the second half later in the week. Thank you all for tuning in, and I guess I'll see y'all in the next one.